American financier Jeffrey Epstein had connections with the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation and high-ranking Russian officials, and worked for the Kremlin by placing its agents in the inner circle of American politicians. Well, he also helped the Federal Security Service gather compromising material on American officials on his infamous islands. Epstein also reportedly met with Vladimir Putin. And, notably, Epstein requested a meeting with Putin right after he was first accused of the crimes that everyone is talking about today. And miraculously, he managed to avoid responsibility the first time. But since then, Epstein has repeatedly gotten involved with Russians. Epstein was also repeatedly seen in photos with Russian women, and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell was seen with Russian soldiers, and that's just the beginning. In addition, Epstein was involved in supplying Russian girls to members of the Western political and business elite, possibly for the purpose of gathering compromising material. And you know, after the United States Department of Justice released more than 3 million files from the Epstein case, many analysts started looking for mentions of Donald Trump in them, but Epstein's direct connections with Moscow turned out to be much more interesting in the new Epstein files. The name Vladimir Putin is mentioned more than 1,000 times, Moscow is referenced almost 10,000 times, and Russia more than 6,000 times. Well, that's even. And now, American intelligence suggests that Jeffrey Epstein apparently worked directly for the Russian Federal Security Service and may also have been connected even to the Israeli Mossad. But get ready, this whole story is far from superficial, and here you need to carefully examine all of Epstein's files. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave any comment under this episode. And if you want to support the work of our YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation. Links and payment details are in this video's description, along with my Telegram channel, Pechi News. Be sure to subscribe. So, while going through millions of Epstein's files, journalists started coming across two mentions more and more often: Vladimir Putin and Moscow, and these mentions explained a lot. United States intelligence says that Jeffrey Epstein was running the world's largest operation to infiltrate women into political elite circles on behalf of the Russian Federal Security Service. The publication of more than 3 million new documents related to the late sex offender confirms the claim that Epstein acted in the interests of Moscow and possibly Israel when he arranged meetings for some of the most influential people in the world. At this point, it is already known that in the published Epstein files, the name of Russian President Vladimir Putin is mentioned 1,056 times, while Moscow is mentioned almost 10,000 times and Russia nearly 6,000 times. Epstein apparently even managed to get an audience with Vladimir Putin after his 2008 conviction for soliciting a minor for prostitution. And after that, there were some particularly interesting episodes, and we will discuss all of them today. And now sources from the Daily Mail claim that connections with the Kremlin might explain why. Epstein seemed to lead an ultra-wealthy lifestyle that was completely incompatible with his career as a financier. Yes, he earned a decent amount, but it still didn't add up to how he suddenly acquired 2 islands and a ton of money. And here's an interesting point. In new documents related to the Epstein case, the American financier is referred to as, quote, manager by the manager of Vladimir Putin's fortune. This suggests that Epstein was not just recruiting girls, but was also involved in managing part of the Russian dictator's fortune. And by the way, not just his. Epstein, as stated in the documents, provided similar services to the former Zimbabwean dictator Robert Mugabe. And here the first uncomfortable moment immediately arises. Now in the United States, they claim that American security services have been tracking him for years, but their British colleagues showed hesitation because of Epstein's connection to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. They say you couldn't dig into the bosses, but now it has come to light that Epstein offered Andrew Windsor to meet a beautiful 26-year-old woman. A Russian woman in August 2010, 2 years after Epstein's conviction and after he reached out to Moscow. At this point, the situation gets even more tangled. And next, I'll quote the Daily Mail. American intelligence experts believe that Epstein was drawn into the world of espionage through business dealings with Robert Maxwell, the disgraced media mogul who, like Epstein, died under unclear circumstances. In Maxwell's case, his body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean in 1991. Apparently, he fell overboard from his yacht. Epstein was found hanged in 2019, but his relatives believe he was killed to be silenced. Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine, is serving a 20-year sentence for child sex trafficking and other crimes related to her connection with Epstein, whom she reportedly met shortly after her father's death. So, why did I bring all this up in the context of American intelligence? It was stated that Robert Maxwell, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, who is now in prison, had been a Russian agent since the 1970s when he was involved in the extradition of Soviet Jews to Israel with the participation of the Israeli intelligence service Mossad. And later, Maxwell's daughter Ghislaine laundered Russian money by transferring it to the West through financier Jeffrey Epstein, and it is believed that Jeffrey Epstein was introduced to Maxwell and the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation, an oil tycoon who was also paid by Russian intelligence. The investigation into Robert Maxwell's business operations revealed connections not only with the Soviet KGB, but also with the Israeli Mossad and British military intelligence, SIX. American security officials also believed that Epstein had long-standing ties to Russian organized crime, which could have been blackmailing him. This could explain how easily Epstein was able to fly girls from Russia to his islands. No one even questioned what was going on or where this American was taking Russian women. And here's what one of the Daily Mail's sources in American intelligence says, quoting Andrew Windsor. Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and all the others were placed in compromising situations on the island, which was packed with surveillance technology. This is the largest honey trap operation in the world. This might explain rumors that the Kremlin has compromising material on Donald Trump and others. I want to emphasize that this is just a hypothesis, but the hypothesis suggests that some of the women from Russia who provided sexual services on Epstein's island were employees of the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation. Epstein's letters reveal even more. In a letter sent to Epstein on September 11, 2011, an unnamed associate discusses a meeting with Putin during an upcoming trip to Russia. This person writes to Epstein, "I spoke with Igor. He said that the last time you were in Palm Beach, you told him that you had a meeting scheduled with Putin on September 16, and that he can book a ticket to Russia to arrive a few days before you." It also became known that Epstein had another meeting scheduled with Vladimir that year. In an email to Epstein, Japanese entrepreneur Joy Ito informs the pedophile Epstein that another American billionaire, Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, will not be able to attend the meeting with Putin. Ito writes, quote, "Hi Jeffrey, I couldn't convince Reid to change his schedule to meet with Putin with you." And in a subsequent email sent to Epstein, Ito said that unfortunately the meeting was cancelled, while the meeting between Epstein and Putin, after July 17, 2014, when Russian terrorists, shot down a Malaysia Airlines passenger plane over Ukraine. In another email sent in November 2010, Epstein asks someone if they need a Russian visa, adding, "Listen, I have a friend, Putin. Should I ask him?" Well, here comes the most important and sensational revelation. Because in other emails it was discovered that Epstein claimed he could provide the Kremlin with valuable information about Donald Trump ahead of the summit with Putin in Helsinki in 2018. Epstein then directly passed the message to Torbjörn Jagland. That was the then Secretary General of the Council of Europe, so that he would connect him with the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, so that he could tell him how best for Putin to handle Trump. So Epstein says, "Arrange a meeting with Lavrov for me, I'll share some information so that Lavrov can pass this information on to Putin." And then Putin can use all of this as leverage during negotiations. And let me remind you, this was in 2018. In 2019, Epstein hanged himself, indicating he may have sensed a serious threat. As a result, in 2018, Putin and Trump met at the summit in Helsinki, and after that meeting, as you remember, Donald Trump came out looking absolutely furious. And that's when, for the first time, he publicly stated at the press conference that Russia did not interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And in general, he trusts Vladimir Putin more than American intelligence. But that's not all. Another document indicates that the FBI was warned that, according to the investigation, Epstein was a Mossad spy. And here the pieces come together, a quote from the FBI report. Jeffrey Epstein was close to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and received espionage training from him. In June 2013, Epstein sent Barak an email that said, quote, Vladimir Putin will reorganize his staff this summer, bringing only his most trusted people closer. More detailed information is available by phone or in person. This message just said he's in touch. In addition, it turned out that Jeffrey Epstein was connected with the former head of Vladimir Putin's youth organization, Masha Drokova. So here is this Russian Masha. Later, she founded a company in the United States called Day One Ventures, which, as it turned out, was a bit later in Silicon Valley with the purpose of stealing technologies for Russia. Even later, in 2021, in the book by investigative journalist Craig Winston Unger, it was claimed that before becoming president, Donald Trump established connections with Vladimir Putin's camp, thanks to his 15-year friendship with Epstein in the book titled American Compromat: How the KGB Raised Donald Trump. Winger also claimed that Epstein relied on Russian pimps who supplied him with many girls whom he later abused. Winger believes that the Federal Security Service could have obtained compromising materials from the numerous video recordings that Epstein reportedly made with his famous friends, and with these Russian girls. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like if you want to support the channel's work. You already know that all the links and details are in the description of this video. I would appreciate any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.